Hi, everybody. I'm Roy Firestone. Edward Field is 96 years old. He's won an Academy Award. He's regarded as one of America's most distinguished poets. And he's still active. He lectures, he writes his own poetry. That's impressive enough. But Edward's life story is remarkable. As a closeted gay man in World War II, Edward Field was a navigator on a heavy bomber. He navigated more than 24 bombing missions over Germany. In June of 1945, towards the end of the war, Edward's bomber was riddled with anti-aircraft fire and the plane went into a nosedive. The bomber crash-landed into the sea. Edward and some of his crew survived, just barely, but some did not. What transpired in that struggle for survival was in a way a kind of metaphor for Edward's life. Diane Friedel Weiss is the niece of Edward Field. She is a writer herself, a one-time stand-up comic and filmmaker. In her new short called A Minor Accident of War, Diane found an animator and let her uncle record the narration of his fateful mission where he and his crew were shot down over Germany and crash-landed. Now, this short film was up for an Academy Award nomination, and I believed it was worthy of a nomination, but they came up a bit short. Edward Field will be 97 years old in June. He was 22 years old when his plane went down. That was so long ago, it's almost a forgotten dream. He lost his lifelong partner of 58 years in 2018, and yet he presses on. His life is art and words and poetry. He speaks openly of gay people and their still considerable challenges and hardships in being accepted both in the military and in everyday American life. He reflects on his childhood when he was beaten and bloodied every day for just being Jewish. Diane's film tells his story using Edward's voice about valor, heroism, and overcoming the greatest challenges in life. Edward Field now joins us. Welcome. Nice to see you, Edward. You look great.
Thank you, Roy.
And I'm sure there are people every day, that's what happens when you get older, people say how you look instead of how you feel. I find that more and more. Hey, you look great. They don't even bother asking how you feel. But how do you feel? How do you feel with your life right now?
Big thing is to keep walking. And so I devote myself to I walk every day for a mile, and I also do my exercises every night. Now that my partner is gone, I have evenings free. He was blind, and I used to read to him every night. Now I don't have that pleasure, so I do a set of yoga every night.
Beautiful.
And it keeps me straight. I think it's very important in old age to stand up straight, and
if not being straight,
Well, that was not really a life problem to me.
Right.
When I was a child, after all, I got beaten up for being a Jew. That was the thing. And of course, I was considered bookish. So if you were bookish, it didn't matter whether you were gay or straight. You were a sissy anyway.
I was just going to say, hey, I want to ask you about that. You were beaten, as you said, as more for being a Jew than ever being gay as a kid. Do you think, even if it was subconscious, it led to your desire to fight oppression in the war, to volunteer, to go to war? Because not only did you feel the anti-Semitism, but you understood what oppression was really all about? Or was it not that complicated?
It was. I was dying to get away from my town that treated me so badly, and my family, which was a complicated situation with 6 children and immigrant parents who didn't really know what life in America was about, especially not moving to a WASP town where we stood out like a sore. So getting into the Army was my first time ever being accepted. And nobody asked my religion. For the first time in my life, nobody asked my religion.
Interesting.
And they never, being closeted was no problem because you always were. It was normal. You didn't talk about things like that. And the guy liked me, accepted me. I was part of a crew. So I really had a marvelous experience in the war.
Hmm. You know, before we talk about the incredible story that you endured and others endured too, I want to bring up a quote that you've used before in your poetry. You talked about Frankenstein. Frankenstein is actually an equivalent of how a gay person feels growing up, because Frankenstein is the underdog. And the real Frankenstein were the people who were rejecting you, who were trying to give your life, make it difficult for you in your life. Am I correct?
Yes, they made me the monster. In truth, they were monsters.
Now, you've spoken openly of the fact that you had some relationships while serving.
It was the whole thing was a revelation to me.
Mm-hmm.
Gay life in the army was really pretty, I didn't know about it. I learned more about gay life in the army than I ever knew before.
Did you feel as though as a closet, you were still a closeted gay man during World War II, that you had to fear anything, fear being caught, maybe being feared as ostracized or court-martialed or anything like that? I don't even know if it was a court-martial, quote unquote, crime, that I use the word with quotes, crime.
It was.
So you could have been court-martialed if you were caught.
Yeah, and I did meet somebody who was court-martialed.
Wow.
There was a big gay club on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. During the war, soldiers from every army, Allied army, flocked there. So gay life was really pretty open. Wow. I didn't know about all that stuff. And I met a captain there, and he was being court-martialed for being caught in bed with a paratrooper. He was perfectly free to go around, and he flew down to my air base in the south of France and was able to take out a Jeep from the motor pool. He did everything. He was free.
We're gonna continue this point that you're making about being free, because you have a very powerful quote, but we'll do it towards the end about being gay as being free. But we'll talk about that in a few moments. But first, I want you to listen to Diane Friedel Weiss, and of course, who directed and produced this wonderful film, this incredible short, which I urge everyone to see. But she talks about you, your legacy, and the family, and why she wanted to represent this in her film. Take a look.
My Uncle Edward is what I call and consider a quiet hero. While he has many achievements and accomplishments, he never boasts or brags about them. From his earliest years serving at 21 years old during World War II as a navigator and flying 27 missions against Nazi Germany, fighting against fascism and for freedom, to becoming a poet and an author and a significant voice in LGBT literature. And even today, at 96 years old, my uncle is as vital and creative and handsome as ever, and he's an inspiration to me daily.
Beautifully said. I want to show us a short clip from the short about what it was like to be shot down, and you're trying to navigate some kind of landing. We'll watch this and we'll talk about it on the other side.
The plane jumped again and again as the shells burst under us, sending jagged pieces of steel through the fuselage and into the engines and gas tanks. Then, being hit, we had to drop out of formation right away, losing speed and altitude. And when I figured out our course with trembling hands on the instruments, I was navigator. We set out on the long trip home to England, alone.
I can't even imagine the terror.
Yeah, by the way, the animation is brilliant.
Isn't it tremendous? It's just a tremendous piece. The whole thing is so powerful. But I can't imagine, Edward, the terror. You have the lives of everybody, include yourself, on that in that navigational format, what you're trying to figure out what to do. You have only seconds. You've probably never been in quite that experience at any level before, because you're losing altitude quickly and you're looking for a place to land. Can you possibly describe the anxiety, the fear? Do you have even time to be afraid? I don't know.
Of course I was trembling, because that's the truth. But I wasn't really panicky. And then the crew would all call me and say, "Where are we? Where are we?" And I had to give them some kind of answer. I was this little kid in the nose of the plane. I was only a little kid, really.
You had to tilt the plane to get as much of the fuel left, because there was no fuel left.
The plane was going down. The gas tanks, the little bit of gas in the gas tanks went forward to the engines.
Wow.
See, the wings, the gas tanks were in the wings.
I see.
The flak just went right through the aluminum skin of the plane like paper.
Did you think you were going to make it? Did you think you were going to die, or did you not have time for even that?
When I was in the water, I thought that death was possible.
It was midwinter, and the waves were mountains, and the water, ice water. The ditching survival manual said you could live in it 25 minutes. Since most of the crew were loaded onto my raft, I had to stay in the water. My raft? It was their raft. They got there first, so they would live. 25 minutes I had. Live, I said to myself. You've got to live.
So you're holding on to this raft and you're beginning to lose your grasp. You even said, I don't think I can hold on much longer. And someone put his hands out for you on that raft, right?
Nobody did until, for some reason, the ball turret gunner, a young man from Arkansas, Jack Cook, whom I didn't know really. He was a sergeant and lived in a different barracks. See, officers and enlisted men really lived separately on the base. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, I do not know why, he got out of the raft and let me get into the raft in his place.
He saved your life?
He saved my life, and he died because that water, you couldn't stay in it. Made another mistake. He took his clothes off. To go into the water, people who don't live in the water don't understand. You've got to have clothes on to keep warm. Of course. So all heavy flying clothes would have kept him alive a little longer. But still, he got into the leaky raft, and water was washing over them, and they couldn't live.
There's the scene at the end of a movie called Saving Private Ryan, which I'm sure you might have seen. I assume you did. I don't know if you did, but at the very end of the movie, the man who is Private Ryan looks back at all those who sacrificed to let him live, to let him survive. And he says to his wife, "Tell me I'm a good man. Tell me I served my humanity well, because that is my legacy for the people that gave me the opportunity to live again." My question, do you feel at times you wanted to make something of your life to live the kind of life, exemplary life, that would have fulfilled the promise that this person who died, would give to you to live on?
I was so grateful to be saved and rescued out of the water, that I really didn't I never felt guilty. It was a burden. And all my life, I will always remember him.
Unbelievable. I interviewed Ted Williams one time, the baseball player, the very great Ted Williams, who had two services both in World War II and in Korea. He was shot down in Korea and escaped with his life John Glenn, by the way, was a fellow pilot with him, John Glenn, the astronaut. But I said to Ted, after he survived this horrific being shot down and almost crashing into a wall at 200 miles an hour, did he want to be honorably discharged? Did he want to go home after that? He said, go home. He said, hell, go home. I was up in the air the next day. That's why I thought of you, Edward, because you were up in the air virtually right away too.
It was about, we did have a week. We had
a week. Oh, excuse me.
And then we started flying missions again, and I was gung-ho to go back.
When you were with another crew member in the raft and you saw the ship coming to save you, you weren't sure if it was a German ship or American ship or a British ship. You started to weep. Why?
Relief.
Oh.
It was British, because if it was German, my dog tags, which were the ID you wore, said J on it. So the Germans would know I was a Jew and they treat me horribly.
I want to interrupt you for a second, because one of my favorite quotes that you wrote was that about being gay is a marvelous experience in your life because it liberated you. It freed you. You were free. Define what it is to be free as a gay man.
Well, for me, I was always inside, open to myself. But until I met my partner, who I lived with for 58 years, I really wasn't living a full life. And to be free meant you could live a full life.
Oscar Wilde, the very famous poet who happened to be gay, once had a quote, and I want to read it to you, and I want you to reflect on it. He said, "I don't regret for a single moment having lived for pleasure. I did it to the full, as one should do everything that one does. There was no pleasure I did not experience. I threw the pearl of my soul into a cup of wine. I went down the primrose path to the sound of flutes. I lived on honeycomb." I guess he's talking about the freedom to live authentically.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could reflect on that quote.
Yeah, I come from a different era in America where, of course, he was in a high London atmosphere. But
Right.
In America, before the war, sexuality was despised. All sexuality was condemned, not just gay sexuality. Think how women had to stay virgins until they got married. Nobody would marry them. I remember my sisters were lectured constantly. They had to keep their virginity or they'd never get married.
Many years ago, I interviewed a baseball player, and I used to ask some esoteric type questions. And his name was Willie Stargell. He was a very famous baseball player, a lovely, lovely guy who was really open to any question. And I think you're pretty open to any question too. But this is such a broad question I asked him, and I wanted him to fill in the canvas. And as a poet, you could do it. I said, "Willie, after all these years, what do you know?" And I'm going to ask you that, Edward. After all these years, you're going to be 97, please. 97 in June. What do you think you know?
I was given a lot of opportunity. And of course, the war was really a wonderful experience in every way. So I was given all of these opportunities, and here I am. I feel fine.
Well, Edward, it's been an unbelievable experience for me to talk to you. I wish you continued good health. I know that you live your life fully, even now, going to be close to 97 years old. I think this is an absolutely marvelous documentary, short, whatever we want to call it. It's so stylishly produced by Diane, and your narration was brilliant and elegant and powerful. The name of the film, once again, is Minor Accident of War. Edward Field, who is the star. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, sir. And I say this again, and I know it sounds like a cliche, but thank you for your service, not just in serving the military, but serving mankind. Truly, thank you.
You're great. Thank you.